Thanks everyone. I'm really excited to be here and kind of kick off a short research block of this meeting. My short presentation is going to highlight research about what we learned from WEAs sent over the past 10 years and how it informs the design and training of the message design dashboard that will be discussed next. So decades of empirical research and a really strong research record shows what an effective WEA needs to contain. It needs to contain the source, hazard, location, guidance, and timing information. So together, these types of information help people understand the situation, believe the threat is real, and feel they're at risk. It helps people make protective action decisions while reducing their likelihood of information seeking. So just how common are these types of information? Well, we conducted a content analysis of over 6,000 WEA messages to answer this question. So for this presentation, I will talk about the importance of each content type in more detail, how frequently they've been included in the last decade of WEAs sent through IPAWS, and why that matters. And I'll also describe the differences between 90 and 360 character messages and how complete they are. So we examined all WEA messages sent from 2012, or the introduction of WEA, up until April of 2022. We excluded messages from the National Weather Service about missing persons, Amber Alerts, test cancellations, and messages sent in Spanish. This left us with 6,080 unique WEA messages, most of which were 90 characters in length. So we coded these messages for hazard, source, location, timing, and guidance information, and whether they were complete or included all 5 of those content areas. We also dug a little deeper into a few more of these concepts. But first, I like to show the frequency of WEAs that have been sent over time. As you can see, there was a sharp increase in 2019 with the introduction of 360 character WEAs and public safety messages. I do want to point out that the year 2022 is incomplete since we stopped analyzing messages after April. So next, I'm going to provide an overview of our results presented based on what is most frequently included in a WEA to least frequently included in a WEA. The first type of information I would like to talk about is location information. So location information specifies who is at risk and who is not at risk for experiencing impacts, as well as who needs to take action. So specific location information, this can increase message understanding and belief that someone is at risk. So we ask not only if location information is present, but how specific is it based on how it's described. Here we find that about 84% of all WEAs included some type of location information. This was the most common of all of those 5 contents I went over. This type of information, as you can see, was also more likely to be in a 360 character WEA than a 90 character WEA. So in looking at how location was described and how specific it is, we find that most often a town or a city was mentioned, followed by a road or highway, and then a local landmark like City Hall. So these are more specific types of location information that allow people to determine where they are relative to a hazard. However, about 15% of all WEAs overall had non-specific or ambiguous information by stating in your area or something to that effect. This was more common in the 90 character WEAs. So this vague location information, it may lead people to feel anxious and seek more information to reduce their anxiety, which results in protective action delay, especially if they don't know how WEA works and why they're receiving a message. So the next type of information to discuss is hazard information, or the event that poses a threat to people. So confusion, uncertainty, and again, anxiety can happen when a hazard isn't named, and this can lead to additional information seeking before acting. So in addition to naming the hazards, WEAs ideally would also describe it or provide details about its physical characteristics. So for example, how many feet of storm surge is expected? So when you describe the hazard, it helps people better understand the situation that's occurring, why it's a threat to them, and why certain protective actions need to be taken. Finally, given the introduction of public safety messages in 2019 and WEAs being used for COVID in 2020, we were also interested in the types of hazards WEAs were sent for. So we find that hazard information was common in both 90 and 360 character WEAs. However, description of the hazard was less common, with only about 22% including this information. Unsurprisingly, hazard description information was more common in the 360 character WEAs. Again, this type of information is important because it helps people perceive the severity of the situation and why they need to act. So then in looking at the types of hazards that precipitated a WEA, the most common was wildfire. But we also found that public safety hazards like 911 outages or boil water advisories, which are not an imminent threat, meaning the danger may not be immediate or necessarily life-threatening, but people still need to be aware and maybe even act. These were about 18% of all WEA messages. This is followed by law enforcement and public health hazards, including COVID-19. So the next type of content I'm going to discuss is guidance, or what people should do to protect themselves. Guidance is the cornerstone of any effective WEA. So people cannot be left to infer what they have to do. They have to be explicitly told. Guidance information can also increase people's confidence that they can act and increases the chances they'll protect themselves. About 71% of all WEAs included guidance. This includes directing them to more information. Guidance was more common in the 360 character WEAs, with about 88% including this information, compared to 64% for 90 character WEAs. So next is time. It's important to inform WEA recipients about how much time there is before impact, so they'll know how much time they have to protect themselves. Timing information ideally should be clearly stated to account for any problems with technology, like message latency or delays in delivery. So we looked at time in 3 ways: time to hazard impact, message expiration, and time in which someone should act. About 40% of all WEAs included one of these 3 types, with this type of information more frequently found in 360 character WEAs. But in breaking down this type of information further, time till impact was the most common, followed by message expiration. But message expiration can be problematic and confusing without indicating when the message was sent. And finally, the time in which someone needs to act was less frequent compared to other types of timing information, and these statements were commonly less specific by using words like now or immediately. So this type of timing information can convey the urgency of the situation and the time in which someone needs to start a protective action, but again, it lacks that overall degree of specificity. Finally is source. Source is the organization or the person sending the message. A clearly recognizable source is necessary for people receiving the message to understand that this warning is official, it is urgent, and they can act upon it. However, source was the least frequent type of content included, found in only about 34.5% of all messages. Messages without a source, this can lead to protective action delay by increasing the likelihood people will confirm with outside sources where the message is coming from. And although over half of the 360 character WEAs included a source, only about 26% of the 90 characters did. So perhaps you're noticing a trend here, that all types of information, the information that people need to make decisions, was more frequently found in the 360 character messages. And this was consistent across all content areas. Finally, all 5 types of information need to work together to help people paint a complete picture of what is going on and how to protect themselves. Complete messages, or those that contain source, hazard, location, guidance, and timing informations, again, it lessens the likelihood that people will spend time looking for more information rather than acting. But complete messages were rare. Only about 8.5% of messages were complete, and only about 3% of the 90 character messages were complete. We know this, but that 90 characters can all but ensure that a message will be incomplete because it's just too short to include all types of information. So due to this limitation, 90 character WEAs act more as alerts. Really, the best they can do is gain someone's attention that something has happened. But 360 character WEAs, they can act as warning messages that provide guidance and motivate protective action decision making. So providing messages that provide this guidance and motivate, clearly inform, and guides individuals about the hazard and the protective actions helps people quickly understand, believe, feel at risk, and decide to act. And so we know you still have to continue sending 90-character WEAs. However, the devices that can only receive 90-character WEAs is a small minority of all mobile devices. So therefore, I'd like to conclude with a little call to action for those of you who write WEAs to take advantage of the opportunity to reduce protective action delay by utilizing the full 360-character WEA to warn populations at risk and include all warning message design elements. But don't worry, the message design dashboard will help you do this, which Dr. Jeanette Sutton will discuss shortly. And that's it. So thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.